There is a strange truth about love that most men never discover until it is far too late. A woman can smile at you, speak kindly to you, spend time with you, even stay beside you for years, and still not truly love you. But when a woman genuinely loves a man, something changes deep within her nature. Her actions begin to reveal what her words often try to hide. The Stoics understood this long ago. They believed human beings always expose their deepest emotions through behavior, not performance. And when love is real, it quietly reshapes priorities, instincts, sacrifices, and even silence itself. A woman who truly loves a man does not merely desire his attention. She begins to protect his peace. In a world where many relationships are built on emotional games, this becomes incredibly rare. Most people bring chaos to each other because chaos is what they carry within themselves. But genuine love softens unnecessary conflict. A woman in love notices the weight on a man's shoulders even when he says nothing. She studies the tension in his eyes. She hears exhaustion in the pauses between his sentences. And slowly, without announcing it, she starts becoming a place of rest for him instead of another battlefield. This is not weakness. It is emotional devotion. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. A woman who truly loves a man begins thinking in terms of us instead of me. His victories become personal to her. His pain disturbs her sleep. Even his smallest disappointments matter in ways she cannot fully explain. This is why one of the clearest signs of genuine love is consistency during difficult seasons. Anyone can be affectionate during moments of pleasure. Anyone can pretend loyalty when life is easy. But hardship exposes truth with brutal honesty. Stoicism teaches that adversity removes illusion. It reveals character. And when a woman truly loves a man, she does not emotionally disappear the moment life becomes inconvenient. Instead, she moves closer. Not because she enjoys struggle, but because her attachment is no longer dependent on temporary comfort. Many men misunderstand this. They assume love is measured by passion, compliments, or attraction. But attraction is instinctive. Real love is sacrificial. It reveals itself through patience when patience is difficult, through understanding when emotions are high, through loyalty when opportunities to leave become available. And perhaps the most powerful thing a woman does for the man she truly loves is this: she allows herself to be emotionally seen. Most people spend their lives hiding. They hide fears behind confidence. They hide pain behind humor. They hide insecurity behind pride. But love creates vulnerability, and vulnerability terrifies the human ego. Especially in a world where people are constantly taught to protect themselves emotionally. Yet when a woman genuinely trusts and loves a man, she slowly removes the armor she shows to everyone else. She speaks differently around him. Her voice softens. Her guard lowers. The parts of her personality hidden from the world begin to appear naturally. She no longer feels the exhausting need to constantly perform perfection. She becomes honest about her fears, her jealousy, her dreams, her childhood wounds, and the silent thoughts she normally keeps buried. This level of openness is not given casually. It is earned. Stoic philosophy teaches that trust is one of the rarest currencies in human life because it requires surrendering control. And when someone gives you emotional honesty, they are handing you something far more valuable than admiration. They are handing you their inner world. But there is another sign that many men overlook because it appears so subtle on the surface. A woman who truly loves a man begins to admire who he is becoming, not just who he already is. Most temporary relationships are transactional. People stay for beauty, status, excitement, validation, or convenience. But deep love sees potential before results arrive. She notices discipline when nobody else respects it yet. She believes in his future during seasons where he doubts himself. She encourages growth instead of competing against it. And this changes the entire emotional dynamic between two people. Because real love does not chain a person down. It expands them. A woman deeply in love does not secretly resent a man's purpose. She wants to see him rise, evolve, conquer himself, and build a meaningful life. His ambition no longer threatens her because she sees herself emotionally connected to his journey. This is why she begins paying attention to details most others ignore. The way his mood changes after failure. The habits that quietly destroy his confidence. The dreams he mentions only once in passing. The insecurities hidden beneath his strength. And without fully realizing it, she starts carrying pieces of his emotional burden inside herself. Not because she has to. Because love naturally creates emotional responsibility. The Stoics often warned against shallow attachment, but they also understood a profound truth about human connection. When affection is sincere, care becomes instinctive. A woman who truly loves a man cannot remain emotionally indifferent to his suffering. Even when she pretends not to notice, part of her mind remains attached to his emotional state. And this creates one of the rarest forms of loyalty in modern relationships. Not loyalty forced by obligation. Not loyalty maintained through fear. But loyalty born from emotional admiration. She defends him when he is absent. She remains considerate even during anger. She watches how others speak about him. And perhaps most importantly, she begins imagining him in her future without needing to say it out loud. This is where love becomes dangerous for the human heart. Because once someone mentally includes you in their future, separation no longer feels like distance. It feels like loss. And that is why women who truly love often express affection in ways men completely fail to recognize at first. Sometimes it appears through concern rather than romance. Sometimes through small acts of attentiveness that seem ordinary until they disappear. Sometimes through silent observation rather than dramatic declarations. Because the deepest emotions are rarely the loudest. They are the most consistent. A woman who truly loves a man remembers the smallest details about him without effort. The food he avoids when stressed. The tone of his silence when something is wrong. The dreams he abandoned years ago but still secretly thinks about at night. She notices shifts in his energy long before other people do. And the reason is simple. Love creates attention. Where attention goes, emotional energy follows. That is why indifference is always more dangerous than anger in relationships. Anger still contains emotional investment. But indifference means the emotional connection is beginning to die. A woman deeply in love does not become emotionally careless with the man she values. Even during conflict, part of her remains emotionally tied to him. She may become frustrated. She may become distant temporarily. But genuine love resists emotional detachment because attachment has already rooted itself deep inside her identity. The Stoics believed people reveal themselves most clearly through repeated action. Not promises. Not temporary emotion. Action. And when a woman truly loves a man, her actions slowly begin aligning with his well-being in ways that become impossible to fake over long periods of time. She becomes more patient with his flaws. More protective of his reputation. More sensitive to his emotional wounds. More invested in his peace than in winning every argument. Because love slowly transforms competition into partnership. And most people never realize how rare that truly is until they experience its absence. Most men spend their entire lives surrounded by attention but starving for genuine understanding. They meet people who desire them temporarily, admire them conditionally, or stay only while circumstances remain convenient. But very few encounter a woman who looks beyond appearances and chooses to understand the man beneath the surface. And when that happens, something inside him changes forever. Because being understood is one of the deepest human desires. A woman who truly loves a man begins noticing the emotional battles he never speaks about openly. She understands that strength often hides exhaustion. That silence can hide fear. That discipline sometimes masks loneliness. While others only see what he provides to the world, she begins paying attention to what the world is taking from him. This is why her care becomes intentional rather than performative. She checks on him differently. She listens differently. Even her presence carries a calming effect because it is no longer based solely on attraction. It is rooted in emotional awareness. And according to Stoic thought, awareness is one of the purest forms of respect. Most people only react to what benefits them personally. But love sharpens perception. It makes someone emotionally attentive to another person's inner state. A woman deeply in love notices changes in energy before words are spoken. She senses emotional distance before conversations become cold. She hears pain hidden beneath ordinary sentences. Not because she possesses magic, because emotional connection creates sensitivity. And perhaps this is why genuine love becomes so difficult to replace once lost. People can replace excitement. They can replace beauty. They can even replace companionship temporarily. But it is extraordinarily difficult to replace someone who truly saw you. Someone who memorized your emotional patterns. Someone who understood your silence without demanding explanation. Someone who remained emotionally present during moments where you felt mentally exhausted by the world. The Stoics constantly reminded themselves that external things are temporary. Beauty fades. Status disappears. Pleasure loses intensity. But character and emotional depth leave permanent marks on the human soul. That is why real love often grows stronger through ordinary moments instead of dramatic ones. A woman who truly loves a man values access to his authentic self. The version of him that exists when no performance is necessary. She enjoys the conversations that happen late at night when ambition quiets down and honesty begins speaking. She becomes attached not only to his strengths, but also to the imperfect parts he tries to hide from everyone else. And strangely enough, this acceptance often terrifies men more than rejection. Because rejection confirms insecurity. But genuine acceptance exposes vulnerability. A man can defend himself against criticism. He can build walls against disappointment. But when someone sincerely accepts him emotionally, he can no longer hide behind the image he created for the world. This is why many people sabotage genuine love without realizing it. They are comfortable being admired. But they are uncomfortable being emotionally known. A woman deeply in love often senses this conflict inside a man long before he admits it himself. She notices the moments he withdraws emotionally after becoming too vulnerable. She sees how quickly he changes the subject after revealing pain. She understands that many men were taught to suppress emotion rather than process it. And instead of humiliating him for it, she protects his emotional dignity. That alone is rare. In modern relationships, many people weaponize vulnerability. They collect personal confessions during moments of intimacy and later use them during conflict. But a woman who truly loves a man handles his emotional weakness carefully because she understands the courage required for him to reveal it at all. She becomes protective of the parts of him the world would easily misunderstand. His fears. His failures. His insecurities. His moments of self-doubt. And this emotional protection creates a level of trust stronger than physical attraction alone could ever build. Because eventually, attraction fluctuates. Life becomes stressful. Bodies age. Difficult seasons arrive unexpectedly. But emotional safety, that becomes priceless. The Stoics believed peace of mind was one of life's highest treasures. And when a woman truly loves a man, she unconsciously begins contributing to his peace instead of draining it constantly. She does not create unnecessary emotional confusion simply to feel desired. She communicates more honestly. She values clarity over manipulation. And even when disagreements happen, her goal is no longer emotional domination. It becomes emotional preservation. This does not mean she becomes perfect. Love does not erase human flaws. She will still become emotional sometimes. She will still overthink, become frustrated, or react impulsively on difficult days. But beneath those temporary emotions remains a deeper instinct, the desire to protect the connection rather than destroy it. And this instinct reveals itself most clearly during moments where she has the power to hurt him emotionally, but chooses restraint instead. That is maturity. That is emotional loyalty. And in many ways, that is love in its purest form. Because real love is not measured by how intensely someone feels during beautiful moments. It is measured by how carefully they handle your heart during difficult ones. A woman who truly loves a man eventually stops viewing the relationship as a competition of ego. She no longer feels the constant need to prove superiority, win every disagreement, or emotionally punish him for imperfections. Instead, she begins asking herself a different question internally. How do we protect what we have? And once that mentality appears, the relationship changes completely. Arguments become less destructive. Communication becomes more sincere. Affection becomes calmer, deeper, and more stable. Because the relationship is no longer fueled only by emotion. It is now supported by intention. And intention is what separates temporary attachment from enduring love. Most people fall in love with feelings. Very few fall in love with responsibility. But a woman who genuinely loves a man slowly accepts emotional responsibility for the bond itself. She understands that words can wound permanently. That disrespect accumulates quietly. That trust, once broken repeatedly, becomes almost impossible to fully restore. So she becomes more conscious of how she speaks to him, how she treats him in public, how she responds when he fails, how she behaves when life becomes difficult instead of easy. Because deep down, she understands something many people never learn. Love is not sustained by intensity alone. It is sustained by care repeated consistently over time. And that is exactly why the rarest relationships often appear the simplest from the outside. From the outside, they do not look extraordinary. There are no constant dramatic displays. No endless need to prove affection publicly. No exhausting emotional games designed to create jealousy, insecurity, or control. Instead, there is something much quieter and far more powerful. There is stability. And in today's world, stability has become deeply underrated because chaos is often mistaken for passion. Many people confuse emotional turbulence with love simply because intensity feels exciting in the beginning. But Stoicism teaches that true strength is calm, disciplined, and controlled. The same applies to genuine affection. A woman who truly loves a man eventually stops seeking emotional chaos as proof of connection. She begins valuing peace, consistency, and emotional security instead. Because she no longer wants temporary excitement. She wants permanence. This changes the way she behaves in subtle ways most men overlook completely. She starts thinking before reacting. She becomes more careful with her words during anger. She values resolution over emotional victory. And most importantly, she begins protecting the relationship from unnecessary outside influence. This is one of the clearest signs of emotional devotion. A woman deeply in love does not allow every opinion, every stranger, or every temporary emotion to interfere with the bond she values. She understands that modern relationships often collapse because too many voices are invited into private spaces. Friends, social media, attention from outsiders, comparison, ego, all slowly poison emotional intimacy when boundaries disappear. But when her love is real, the relationship becomes sacred to her. Not perfect. Sacred. Meaning she handles it with intention instead of carelessness. The Stoics often spoke about discipline as an act of self-respect. And love, when genuine, requires discipline more than most people realize. Discipline in communication. Discipline in loyalty. Discipline in patience. Discipline in resisting destructive impulses during moments of temporary anger. A woman who truly loves a man may still feel temptation, frustration, or emotional confusion at times because she is human. But her decisions begin aligning with long-term emotional preservation rather than short-term emotional satisfaction. And this is where real love separates itself from infatuation. Infatuation asks, "How do you make me feel right now?" Love asks, "How do I protect what we are building together?" That difference changes everything. Because once someone begins protecting the future instead of chasing temporary emotional highs, their behavior naturally becomes more mature. They become less impulsive with threats of leaving, less interested in manipulation, less attracted to unnecessary drama. And slowly, trust begins growing in silence. Not through promises, through repeated behavior. A woman deeply in love becomes predictable in the best possible way. Her loyalty stops fluctuating according to mood. Her care no longer disappears during inconvenience. Her effort becomes steady instead of conditional. This steadiness creates emotional safety, something many men secretly crave but rarely admit openly. The world teaches men to suppress weakness, suppress fear, suppress exhaustion. They are expected to remain composed regardless of pressure. But beneath that conditioning exists a very human desire to feel emotionally safe with someone. Not judged constantly. Not tested constantly. Not forced to earn affection every single day through performance. Just accepted honestly. And when a woman truly loves a man, she gradually becomes the one place where he feels less guarded against the world. This is why men often become deeply attached to emotional peace without even understanding why. It is not always beauty that keeps them connected emotionally. It is relief. Relief from pretending. Relief from emotional tension. Relief from constantly defending themselves psychologically. The Stoics believed peace was one of the greatest forms of wealth a human being could possess. And in relationships, peace becomes priceless because emotional exhaustion slowly destroys affection over time. A woman who genuinely loves a man notices this instinctively. She understands that constant disrespect weakens intimacy. Constant criticism weakens confidence. Constant emotional unpredictability creates distance. So instead of constantly searching for reasons to fight, she begins searching for ways to strengthen connection. Not because she loses individuality, but because love has shifted her mindset from self-centered emotion toward shared emotional responsibility. And perhaps one of the most revealing things she does for the man she truly loves is this. Not because she loses individuality, but because love has shifted her mindset from self-centered emotion toward shared emotional responsibility. And perhaps one of the most revealing things she does for the man she truly loves is this. And perhaps that is why so many people spend years chasing excitement while unknowingly walking away from peace. They become addicted to uncertainty because uncertainty creates emotional intensity. The highs feel intoxicating. The unpredictability feels thrilling. But eventually, emotional chaos extracts a price from the soul. It creates anxiety, exhaustion, mistrust, and emotional instability disguised as passion. The Stoics understood that what disturbs the mind repeatedly can never truly nourish the heart. Real love does not leave a person emotionally shattered every day. It steadies them. A woman who truly loves a man gradually becomes emotionally reliable in ways that cannot be imitated for long periods of time. Her effort remains visible even when life becomes ordinary. And this matters more than most people realize because relationships are not built in dramatic moments alone. They are built in repetition. In ordinary conversations. In daily patience. In small acts of thoughtfulness nobody applauds. A woman deeply in love remembers what matters to the man she values because emotionally, his inner world has become meaningful to her own. She notices the things that motivate him. The things that discourage him. The things he pretends not to care about but secretly carries inside himself for years. And slowly, she starts adjusting herself not out of obligation, but out of emotional consideration. This is an important distinction. Manipulation changes behavior to gain control. Love changes behavior to protect connection. One is strategic. The other is sincere. And sincerity is difficult to fake because eventually true intentions reveal themselves through consistency. That is why Stoicism places such importance on action over speech. Anyone can say beautiful words. Anyone can create temporary emotion. But repeated behavior exposes the truth hidden beneath personality. A woman who genuinely loves a man eventually becomes calmer in how she handles his imperfections. She stops searching for reasons to emotionally punish him for every flaw. Instead, she begins distinguishing between mistakes that require growth and imperfections that simply make him human. This creates compassion. And compassion is one of the strongest forms of emotional intimacy. Because when people feel emotionally safe enough to be imperfect around each other, the relationship deepens beyond superficial attraction. Many relationships fail because both people become actors instead of companions. They constantly perform strength, perfection, independence, superiority. But performance creates distance. The more masks people wear, the less emotionally connected they become. A woman deeply in love eventually grows tired of emotional performance around the man she trusts. She wants authenticity instead. Honest conversations. Honest affection. Honest silence. And this honesty changes the emotional atmosphere between two people completely. Suddenly, there is less fear of judgment. Less fear of vulnerability. Less need to constantly protect the ego. The Stoics believed freedom begins when a person stops being enslaved by appearances. And in love, this freedom appears when two people no longer feel the exhausting pressure to constantly impress each other. Instead, they begin seeing each other clearly. Not idealized. Not fantasized. Clearly. And still choosing one another. That choice becomes more meaningful over time because real love eventually moves beyond emotion alone. Emotions fluctuate naturally. Some days passion feels overwhelming. Other days life feels stressful, exhausting, distracting. But when love matures, it develops something stronger than temporary feeling. Commitment. A woman who truly loves a man does not disappear emotionally every time her mood changes. Her loyalty becomes rooted in values, not just emotion. She understands that meaningful relationships cannot survive if affection exists only during perfect moments. So she learns patience. She learns restraint. She learns the difference between temporary frustration and permanent emotional damage. And this wisdom changes how she handles conflict. Instead of trying to wound him during arguments, she tries to preserve dignity even while upset. She becomes more conscious of words because she understands certain wounds remain long after anger fades. This level of emotional awareness is rare because most people react impulsively. They speak from ego, pride, insecurity, or rage without considering the long-term consequences of repeated disrespect. But a woman deeply in love eventually realizes something powerful. You cannot repeatedly damage someone's spirit and expect intimacy to survive untouched. So she becomes more intentional. Not silent. Not weak. Intentional. There is a difference. She still communicates pain. She still expresses disappointment. But she does it with the goal of understanding rather than destruction. And perhaps this is one of the clearest signs of genuine affection. She stops viewing vulnerability as a weapon. Instead of collecting weaknesses to use later, she protects them. Instead of humiliating him publicly, she preserves his dignity. Instead of exposing his emotional scars carelessly, she handles them gently. Because once love becomes deep enough, hurting him begins to hurt her too. That is emotional unity. And emotional unity cannot exist where selfishness dominates completely. The Stoics often reminded themselves that the quality of a person's relationships reflects the quality of their character. A woman who truly loves with maturity begins developing emotional discipline because she understands love is not sustained by emotion alone. It is sustained by character. Character determines loyalty when temptation appears. Character determines patience during hardship. Character determines honesty when lies would be easier. And over time, this becomes the foundation of lasting emotional connection. Not endless excitement. Not constant intensity. Trust. Quiet, stable trust. The kind that allows two people to breathe around each other without fear. The kind that survives difficult seasons because it was built slowly instead of impulsively. The kind that turns affection into emotional home rather than emotional confusion. And once a man experiences that kind of love sincerely, he begins understanding why the Stoics valued inner peace above almost everything else in life. Because a peaceful heart thinks clearly. A peaceful relationship strengthens rather than drains. A peaceful connection allows both people to grow instead of constantly recover from each other's damage. And in a world where many relationships are built on ego, performance, and temporary desire, a woman who truly loves with depth, loyalty, patience, and emotional wisdom becomes unforgettable in ways words can barely describe. Because long after beauty changes and excitement fades, people remember how someone made them feel in the privacy of ordinary life. They remember who brought calm into their chaos, who stayed gentle when the world became cruel, who remained emotionally present during seasons where they felt lost inside themselves. A woman who truly loves a man does not merely become part of his happiness. She slowly becomes part of his emotional foundation. Her voice begins influencing the way he thinks during difficult moments. Her belief in him strengthens him during periods of self-doubt. Her presence becomes tied to safety, stability, and peace in ways he often struggles to explain logically. And this is why genuine love changes people so deeply. Not because it is dramatic, but because it reaches places inside the human heart that ambition, success, and external achievement never can. The Stoics believed every human being carries hidden battles invisible to the outside world. Pride hides them. Strength disguises them. Silence protects them. But love has a strange ability to uncover what the world never sees. A woman deeply in love notices the exhaustion behind confidence, the sadness hidden behind discipline, the loneliness concealed beneath responsibility. And instead of exploiting those weaknesses, she responds with care. That response matters more than most men admit openly, because many men spend years feeling valued only for what they provide. Their usefulness becomes confused with their worth. They are respected when successful, admired when strong, desired when confident, but rarely understood emotionally without conditions attached. So when a woman genuinely cares about the man himself rather than only the benefits surrounding him, it feels unfamiliar, almost unreal. She asks about the things nobody else asks about. She notices emotional changes others ignore. She becomes attentive to his mental state, not only his external performance. And slowly, without realizing it, she creates emotional refuge for him. This is one of the purest forms of love because emotional refuge cannot be manufactured through manipulation. It is built through trust accumulated carefully over time. Trust through consistency. Trust through patience. Trust through emotional safety repeated again and again. And perhaps this is why the loss of real love affects people so profoundly. It is not simply the absence of companionship that hurts. It is the disappearance of emotional understanding. The disappearance of someone who knew your rhythms, your silences, your fears, your habits, your emotional scars. Someone who recognized subtle shifts in your energy before you spoke a single word. The Stoics warned that human beings often recognize value only after absence forces clarity upon them. While something meaningful is present, familiarity dulls appreciation. We begin assuming loyalty is permanent. We stop noticing effort because effort becomes expected. But once genuine affection disappears, the silence left behind reveals its true weight. Suddenly, ordinary moments become painful memories. The conversations once taken for granted replay endlessly in the mind. The emotional safety once freely available becomes impossible to replace casually. And many people realize too late that what they lost was never common. Because true emotional devotion is uncommon. A woman who truly loves a man does not simply stand beside him during visible success. She remains emotionally invested during invisible struggle, during uncertainty, during failure, during moments where even he questions himself internally. This kind of loyalty transforms relationships into something deeper than romance alone. It becomes partnership in the truest sense. Not two people merely enjoying each other temporarily, but two people carrying parts of life together. And this changes how she responds to his growth as well. A woman deeply in love does not secretly resent his improvement. She encourages it. She wants him disciplined, focused, healthy, purposeful. Not because she benefits from controlling him, but because his evolution genuinely matters to her emotionally. His peace matters. His confidence matters. His future matters. And when love reaches this depth, selfishness slowly loses its dominance over the relationship. Of course, no human being becomes perfectly selfless. The ego always exists. Fear always exists. Insecurity always exists. But mature love teaches people to stop feeding every temporary emotion as though it deserves absolute control. The Stoics practiced mastery over impulse because they understood unchecked emotion destroys clarity. The same principle applies to relationships. A woman who truly loves learns that not every feeling requires destruction. Not every moment of anger deserves cruelty. Not every disappointment justifies betrayal or disrespect. So she becomes emotionally wiser over time. She pauses before speaking carelessly. She thinks beyond temporary pride. She protects long-term connection instead of chasing short-term emotional satisfaction. And this emotional discipline becomes one of the strongest indicators of sincere affection. Because anyone can love impulsively. Very few know how to love responsibly. Responsible love understands consequences. It understands that trust,